so that you start fielding phone calls, and people say, are you interested in selling your company? Even then, once you start getting those phone calls, it's very easy to get sucked in to the process, completely sucked in. With 1 or 2 phone calls, and of course here's typically what happens. An entrepreneur will get a phone call from a very hot-sounding buyer. And the entrepreneur who's not been considering selling his company is like, oh, hey, it sounds pretty good. Someone wants to buy the company. Woohoo! Okay, you know, I'm not an expert at this. Let me call an M&A advisor. Okay, what's the first thing they tell you to do? Put the book together. Let me go to the other 199 people so I can get them to bid up the price of the company. So you're right back into that cycle again. All your time has been absorbed. And I think what you often find is that the best buyers are the ones who pick up the phone and called you in the first place. So after you go through that whole process with the 199 other potential buyers, you come back to the point where, you know, the guy who called me on the phone was really motivated and interested enough to pick up the phone and call me. He had the best offer anyway, and that winds up very often being the case. So how to find them? It's really just 2 ways. One is to engage a professional M&A process, which has its serious pitfalls. It's expensive, and in cash, it's expensive. It's expensive in attention budget for the entrepreneur, and it's deleterious, damaging to the company. For the employees to hear about it, to see it, to have parades of investors walking through and having meetings in your conference room, you know, especially if you don't do a deal. If you have a year of that, and all the employees are like, oh, these guys want to dump the company immediately, time to start looking for another job. So a number of reasons why that's pretty harmful. The other way, if you can do it, is just make yourself seem so hot in the marketplace that 2 or 3 people pick up the phone and call you, at which point, you know, if you can get away with it, a lot of people can, some people can't, is to tell them, I want to focus on running my business. If you have an offer, put your offer together and let me see it, okay, in writing. And that filters out a lot of those people, but, you know, every once in a while, who is it that sold Hotmail to Microsoft? He was just, yeah, what was his name? Yes. So anyway, he, from what I understand, the stories that are told, and this could be revisionist history, he just, you know, 300 million? Nah, forget it. 400 million? Nah, forget it. 500 million? Let me ask my board. But he kept, from what I understand, he kept focused on running his business and building up his user base. So, how do you go find buyers? My recommendation is focus on running your business and make it seem, you know, as invaluable as you possibly can, and the right buyer might just surface. Because otherwise, you run the risk of destroying your business in the process of trying to sell it.
Slightly different tangent.
Can you speak a little louder?
On a slightly different tangent, what was it like for you during the early days? I'm assuming that cash burn must be quite high when you first started out. How did you go about getting financing? Was it venture capital?
Okay, very bad assumption. We had a high burn rate. Maybe you missed the early part of the story, but when we started the company, I took $6,000 out of my pocket. My partner took $6,000 out of his pocket. We bought an $11,000 computer, paid $1,000 for health insurance for the year, and day 2 of the company, we were out of money. We never got angel investment, venture capital, or any equity investment of any kind in the company in the entire history of the company. When we sold the company in 2006, there was 0 outside investors. All of the stock was held by myself, my partner, and all of our employees had stock options. Okay. We also had no debt. We never borrowed any money. Okay. So we were one of these rare, unusual stories of a company that just powered their way out of the basement with profits. And it wasn't powered or scratched and clawed, maybe better way to term it. So I went 14 months without a paycheck. Okay. I started the company in first official date of starting the first official date of the company was October 1st, 1990. So we just celebrated our 20th anniversary 2 weeks ago. But the first year was 0 salary. Okay, my health insurance was paid, so I didn't have to worry about that. Okay, and we just started looking for consulting and contracting work in order to amortize the development of our own IP base to sell products. We started bidding on these government contracts, which we eventually won. But my first paycheck didn't come until 14 months later, and we never missed a payroll from that day forward. it was my partner and I and a third guy. We hired the third guy. We were able to pay his paycheck. But it was a very, very, very conservative mentality financially for this company. We did approach venture capitalists. We heard the spiel, and we looked at what the deals were, and we really weren't that excited or impressed. In hindsight, I would say it was a very, very good thing, because then venture capitalists have a totally different agenda. They want the company to explode and be great, and sell it in 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years is a stretch for them, or to go under quickly so they can have the tax write-off. And there is no in between, really. The venture capitalists hate what they call the living dead. These companies in the middle that don't die, but don't explode and get great, and they can't sell them because they're not doing either. You don't want to fire everybody because they're eking out a little bit of money to break even and are a little better. And so looking at Mach, you could look at our revenue history for the first 16 years, and you could classify us as the living dead from a venture capitalist perspective. We looked like the living dead. We went from $1 to $2 to $3 million to $5 million to $10 million. Still, little stuff for a venture capitalist. Very uninteresting, revenue growth for venture capitalists. But for two guys that started a thing in their basement and still owned essentially the whole thing, it was pretty nice. It was a really great company. So, cash flow wise, there are two psychologies. We were really on one end of the spectrum, all the way on one end of the spectrum of never spend money you don't have. As soon as you have to borrow money from somebody or sell equity, then you have another part of it. Okay, you have another factor in there. You just don't want that, so just don't spend it. Okay, do whatever you have to, just not spend money until you actually have to. On the other end of the spectrum, you have entrepreneurs that are very comfortable going and raising $10 million of venture capital money in 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds. To the point where the founders are crammed down to owning 2% of the company. But they pay themselves, several $100,000 for a salary, and they're quite content. And if the company goes under, who cares? Because I paid myself, a couple $100,000 a salary for 3 or 4 years. That's a different mentality. That's a different end of the spectrum. I actually, if my situation worked out best for me, and I actually prefer my end of the spectrum.
How difficult was it for you to get your first contract? I'm assuming that the government would kind of look at you, two-man shop. How did the pitch go?
Another really good question. The SBIR program is designed for small, tiny little companies, 2 guys in the basement. And we submitted tons of proposals, and we proposed the wackiest stuff. We're like, yeah, we can feed mayonnaise to tuna fish, and then we'll can it later, and the tuna salad. Really off the wall stuff. But the government is known for, the U.S. government especially, is known for funding weird stuff like that. And I wouldn't say it was brilliance on the part of the U.S. government for being able to see these revolutionary entrepreneurial ideas, but the U.S. government is like a leaky bag, and if you don't spend your, if you have an SBIR program budget and you have a couple of $1 million to dole out to little companies, and you don't find any proposals that you like, then your next door neighbor gets to take your $2 million and dole it out to his companies. So it winds up being this mad rush to throw cash at things, otherwise you'll lose it. So a lot of really weird, wacky stuff gets funded in the United States, mostly because there's use it or lose it mentality regarding this particular government program. So we really didn't, we were 2 engineers, we really didn't know a lot about sales and marketing and how to write proposals and any of that. So we actually did a very, very poor job of writing the first, half a dozen proposals that we wrote. And maybe it was dumb luck. I think it probably was dumb luck. We won our first contract at the end of 1991, our first major government contract. I had a friend who had an IT company, an IT services company that gave us a little consulting work here and there, hooking up backup tape drives and installing software for other people, really low level stuff, just to get us a little money, rolling the door. So we were appreciative of that. That wasn't the bigger thing we looked for. It turns out that the very, very first small business contract was for the U.S. Army, and it paid for the first prototype of this product, VR Link, which then became our flagship product. And that sort of kicked it off. We won that contract in late '91, so it was about a year after we started the business. And we came out with our first product about a year later, VR Link.